Good evening. This is my presentation of legal aspects of teacher evaluation. This is mod number 9. Okay, so let's dive in. The summary. I'm going to do the summary of the first 3 articles first. So the first article was teacher evaluation. Every student succeed act. So on the left, I got the summary, and on the right, I kind of talked about the pros and cons of each of these articles and what they kind of brought to my attention. So the summary starts about states designing and implementing their own evaluation and support system. I thought, I'll be honest, I kind of knew how these things, why they were or how they were, but I never knew where they came from or what they were actually called. So I knew that Colorado had its own evaluation and support system just because I knew it was different from Kansas, where I came from. So I thought this was actually, out of the 3 articles, the most interesting and the most beneficial to me. They'd also talked about how the Secretary of Ed cannot determine or influence state decisions based on evaluations and what tools and mods they decide to use. And then it also talks about how states must design their own goals, all 3, long-term, short-term, and interim goals. So basically, long story short, the article really talked about how each state has adopted its own evaluation system, and then implemented it with all the goals and all those different things that they need to make it what they believe is a well-rounded tool, and how less of the government can control in each of the states, and the states are free to choose. Some of the pros I picked up on: government does not dictate what's right for everyone. So as we know, that's each state believes, in their own things and what they believe each student needs, and each state looks different depending on that. States can use systems they believe fits their needs. Another pro is can use systems based on growth instead of achievement. Some states are heading that way. Some states are there. Some states are still not interested in it, even despite all the data to support that. And the last thing I picked on is with this act, it influenced, encouraged, and allowed states to take teachers and admin and community input when building these new programs, these new evaluation tools. Just a few cons that I could see arising. I'll try to take both sides, of the stance. State can still choose a base salary and titles based on achievement testing. It blows my mind. I'll be honest, I guess I just didn't really realize how many states still base salary and titles off of state scores. Achievement testing blows my mind. And then no consistency between states to compare data to. So if you're going to compare Kansas, for example, to Colorado, I do not feel like that is an accurate, fair, or even slightly even the same comparison. I think you're comparing apples and oranges. The systems are different. The tests are different. What might be an effective teacher in Colorado is maybe not an effective teacher in Kansas based off that evaluation tool, based off of what Kansas and Colorado determine. Okay, next one. Teacher evaluation and issue overview. Summary: it basically discussed the evolution of the new teacher evaluations. That falls under my category. I'm still in this district considered a new teacher. It discusses different versions of new teacher evaluation, why or why not it may be an effective tool in doing so. So some pros after this article. I do believe that race to the top competition that the government has established and allowed for grants and funding is a positive thing. I do think that there obviously is not a perfect fit for every single situation, but I think it is a step in the right direction. New teacher evals move in the right direction. Talking with my mother, who's a retired teacher where she came from, the evaluation process is completely different, and it has allowed teachers to have valuable feedback. It's no longer just a grade and you move on, like, oh, you're effective, bah. Or, oh, you're not effective, bah. You're not effective, bah. You're not effective, bah. Oh, you're fired. There's a valuable feedback. There's steps in place. You're knowing how you're being graded. You're in dialogue with your administrator, and I just think it's, again, a move in the right direction. Some cons. I took this quote from the beginning in the middle of the article there. It says proficiency means different state to state. So if you're considered proficient in all the categories in Colorado, it could mean something totally different in Kansas or totally different in Texas. So again, it kind of talks about how there's no consistency state to state. Um, a great example being with no consistency, a little off teacher evaluation, but going from Kansas to Colorado, I basically had to get completely recertified. And that's a kind of frustrating piece is I feel like with some part, teaching needs to be a universal look, universal standards, universal evaluation tool. That way we are all on the same page and all of our kids are getting an equal opportunity here and they're all getting the same education opposed to maybe someone getting something better than another or someone doing this instead of that. There's no way to compare. There's no way to collaborate state to state. Off my soapbox. Concern that evals will be connected to pay. That is still happening across the nation, and I don't get it. Lastly, some teachers have higher ELL, SPED, or some even have evaluated on students they don't teach. So I thought it was very interesting that some teachers are still evaluated like through, if you're let's say you're a fourth grade in Colorado, if you're a fourth grade science teacher, you're actually not tested in science in fourth grade, but yet the student scores for the achievement test are still going to reflect you. Now, that doesn't happen in my district, but I am sure there are places around the nation that happens. My class just so happens this year that has a ginormous SPED population compared to the other three classes in fifth grade, and it doesn't matter. My scores will reflect that, and that's not considered when evaluating. And even the same concept with ELL. So again, like I said, our evaluation tools are definitely making the move in the right direction, but as a state, we're still missing some giant things that I think could be better. Teacher evaluation heads court. The third article, big issue throughout the courts is the fact that each state can determine their own educational system. This can lead to many issues, which lead to lawsuits. So there's lawsuits, throughout the article. I talked a lot about different lawsuits found throughout the country about different things. Here I kind of talked about the big picture. The big idea I took from this lawsuit is the use of teacher unions. I'm torn 50-50 with this. The unions are there to support teachers when in need. Would these cases even be successful or even possible without them? I am not a union fan myself, but I have never been in a situation with a district or a state that used evaluation to determine pay. So when in Kansas, I chose not to be part of the union in Hutchinson School District just because I was here for a short time. I believe that strongly that my work will determine my worth. But like I said, I've never been or worked for a district or a state that allows state funding to happen through achievement scores. So I thought it just allowed me to kind of ponder and think of the true purpose behind the union. Usually it's a black and white topic, either you're for or you're against. And I think it's a kind of a unique situation where I believe for a long time it was like, no, there's no place for that. But I believe now, reading some of these articles in these court cases, that unions are needed in special cases and there's still a place for them. And I think that's very important to have, especially when your salary is being determined by achievement scores. And we know through all the data that achievement scores can be altered in so many different ways and is not an appropriate way to test and evaluate a teacher's effectiveness. So I know that I might be missing some of the court costs here, but I think for me, the big picture I took from that was the discussion with teacher unions. So the court case I picked up on actually was one of the court cases that was presented. I didn't realize that until after I found it, because I kind of dove right into this with my admin. She was very curious about this as well. But so we looked into the Houston teachers lawsuit against the Houston Independent School District. The foundation they were working with basically is they use the education value added assessment system to assess their teachers, and they believe that the effectiveness it was ineffective and is unfair and inaccurate. So long story short, Mr. Dewey it sounds like a phenomenal teacher. He had been awarded multiple awards for his achievements in testing, and it sounds like he had an off year, and it docked his pay. And they realized, that is not so much. I'm sure Mr. Dewey didn't have a problem with it when he was getting paid, but then he realized, oh my goodness, this is not an effective tool to determine my worth or my effectiveness, and there's no way I went from being a phenomenal teacher one year to an ineffective teacher the next. So they filed lawsuit against the Houston Independent School District to prove to them that this was an ineffective way to do this. And we see this happen. Looking up more and more court cases, we see this happen all the time, and we see, I guess, to me, I think it really depends on where you're at, depending on whether or not they agree with you or not. Okay. So our evaluation process is broken up into two separate pieces. So right now I'm a probationary teacher. This is my third year. So we have a different evaluation process for new hires. So my probationary teachers are teachers that have been in the district for 1 to 3 years. The district expectations are that you have 2 formal observations a year as well as 7 informal. The 2 formals need to be announced, but the 7 informals do not. And long story short, the probationary, you can basically be fired for anything. There's no probable cause. If they just feel like you're just not the right fit, they can let you go without any type of explanation or anything really. The formal observations all follow the 5 traditional stages. So there's a pre-observation, classroom observation, data analysis, a conference, and then a post-conference. So the informals are just that. They walk in, they look at you, they listen to it could be the whole lesson, it could be 10 minutes of a lesson. Then they put it in our program for the state in Colorado. It's called RANDA, and you look it over, you can leave comments, you click that you saw it, and then you basically move on. Okay. And then our next one is evaluation process for experienced teachers. So these tenured teachers are teachers who have been teaching more than 4 consecutive years in the district. These teachers are, talking with my admin, are close to impossible to let go. They are protected by the state. It's very difficult to remove. You need lots of data, lots of evidence, and lots of processes and tools that you have used that have failed over 3 consecutive years before you can have any probable cause to fire someone. So as you can tell, 3 years takes a little while to get anything done, and this is without a union. Teachers with highly effective ratings, or the district only requires 3 observations a year, and those 3 observations can be formal or informal. Teachers that with poor effectiveness rating from the year before required 7 to 10 observations, and 2 of those must be formal. They do that because they want the formal to be in place so that you can build a plan and have a plan in place to build your effectiveness. They just don't want 7, hey, you're not doing a good job. They want a plan in place that you can talk about, work through, and that way you can grow to be a more effective teacher. Formal observations, again, follow the 5-step process. So 2 different evaluation processes, one for tenured teachers and one for probationary. Okay? So some things I would think about for legal issues and evaluations as a future leader. Kind of broke down my big 3 here. So the first thing I'm going to do is make sure I'm going to communicate with my staff. My staff's going to know the evaluation process beforehand and what to expect. I don't want this to be a gotcha moment, all right? I'm going to do my evaluations in a timely manner and communicate clearly with each of my staff members throughout the process. I want this to be a learning experience, not a gotcha moment. Okay, so I don't want there to be any tricks. I don't want there to be any surprises. I want to know what I'm going to walk into, and I want them to know what I am expecting to see. I want them to see the rubric, all those different things. I want this to be a learning experience for both of us, a comfortable experience, and a collaborating experience. Number 2, I'm going to stay up on current issues and legal issues happening throughout the country. Watching the news, just reading all the articles, keeping up with things that way I don't get blindsided by any different events or any different cases that are happening that could happen here just as well as anywhere else. And the last thing I'm going to do is continue to invest in professional development so that I am up to date on rules, laws, and expectations for the evaluation process. I believe our district does a phenomenal job of that. They reevaluate rules and procedures every month as an entire district, and I think if they continue to do that, I think the odds of them being blindsided with a lawsuit becomes less and less a reality. So there's my presentation. Hope you liked it, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.